Hey, everybody. Well, welcome to Saturday Night Live with me, Pastor Ryan. So glad that you are joining me tonight. Again, what a beautifully sunny day. It was cold, though, quite honestly. And looking forward to the hope of spring, right? And, uh, people keep saying to me, and this is again, we've been in Pennsylvania 20 years, but it still amazes me how people say, oh, but you're used to the cold. Well, quite honestly, no, not anymore. I am used to Pennsylvania weather, and I am looking forward to the 50s this coming week, and what that's going to bring. Melted snow, warmer temperatures, and anyway, I'm just kidding. It was cold today, and yes, I am looking forward to spring because spring just brings all kinds of, hope for growth. And that's what I love about Saturday nights is when we get to dig into the scriptures and hope of more growth and digging in and taking next steps. And that's why I love doing this, and that's why I love doing it with you. So tonight we're going to continue in our series on the parables of Jesus, and specifically starting to look at how do we live out the story as Jesus told stories through the scriptures. How do we live them out? He didn't just teach them to, kind of look smart or to paint a picture. He shared them because he wanted people that were starting to follow him. He wanted them to think about how to live out the life of following him. And he didn't just want to totally give the answers. He wanted people to think and to be able to discover more about him and what it looks like to follow him. And so over the next number of weeks and couple months, actually, we're going to be digging in to the parables of Jesus and living out the story and talk about how we live them out. And so tonight is all about how do we respond to spirit infused moments. How do we respond to spirit infused moments? And tonight it's not a typical parable passage. Some of the parables were the parable of the sower and the seed. It's literally Jesus telling a story. Tonight it's a little bit of a different one in Matthew chapter 12. And I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'm gonna read a part and then talk, and then we'll go to another part. But we're gonna be in Matthew chapter 12, starting at verse 22. And this is a passage where Jesus is being, he's just operating in the fullness of his ministry. And so let's start chapter 12, verse 22 and verse 23. Then they brought him a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute, and Jesus healed him so that he could both talk and see. All the people were astonished and said, "Could this be the son of David?" So I love this, right? Like here's this man who's demon possessed. He's blind, he's mute, he can't speak, he can't see, and it says Jesus healed him so that he could both talk and see. And these are people who are following him, who they were not used to this kind of thing. Like this was new to them. Seeing someone have compassion, this poor guy likely was cast out. And so it's as Jesus, is moving through the territory, somebody who cared about this man brings him to Jesus, and Jesus brings healing to him. And it's this amazing testimony of this guy coming to see and hear, and Jesus does this, right? He sees him, he hears him, he touches him, and he heals him. And the people are amazed. Like it says, the word in the NIV is they're astonished. And they ask this interesting question: could this be the son of David? And could this really be the promised Messiah? Could this really be the promised deliverer? Could this be, could he be who he's been talking about being? Like, this is too outside the box to just be, one of the apostles, or this has to be Jesus, the Messiah. And that's who they meant by when they said the son of David, because the Messiah would come from the line of David. And Jesus himself referred to himself, and he was referred to as the son of David. And, people, I think, are really seeing this clear God moment. And these are clearly God moments happening right in front of them. And this though wasn't the first time that they were seeing, the compassion of Jesus. Wasn't the first time that they were seeing his care. That's why they brought this man to him. They had seen this before. His power at work. They had seen him working. I think what was so interesting in that they brought this, again, it says demon-possessed man who was blind and mute. They had seen the compassion in the eyes of Jesus and knew that they could bring their friend, their family member. We don't know who brings them. We have no idea. But whoever it was had seen the compassion in the eyes of Jesus enough to know that they could bring him to Jesus. They could see the love in his eyes, and and the news is spreading about him, and they were responding by bringing more and more people to Jesus, who is in need, people who were lost, people who were broken, people who were alone. They were responding. The people were responding to the spirit-infused moments. This was different. And so more and more as we read through the gospel accounts, we see people responding to these spirit-infused moments where Jesus is doing these incredible things. And they begin to bring people, they begin to step in, they begin to surrender, they begin to trust more. In their humility, they begin to really engage at much deeper levels. Now, let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, have you seen or experienced a spirit-infused moment of God breaking into the mess in your world? Maybe, bringing healing, restoring hope. Today at New Life, we had Carla Jones' memorial service, celebration of life. And, one of the things I love about, a funeral, especially for someone who followed Jesus, is hearing the story of how moment after moment, Carla saw the Spirit of God breaking in. She saw Jesus bringing hope and healing and restoration, and she went deeper and she went deeper and she went deeper. And this response, one of the things I shared at the funeral today is so beautiful, is that time and time again, she talked about how Jesus was leading and blessing and how he had been there for her. And over again, she would say how much she loved him. And what I love about that is that's the response to multiple spirit-infused moments. And that's what's happening right here in this the very beginning of this passage. Again, then they brought him a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute, and Jesus healed him so that he could both talk and see. And all the people were astonished and said, "Could this be the son of David?" And how do you respond? How do you respond to these moments? I guess would be one of my second question of the two. Have you seen and experienced spirit-infused moments where Jesus breaks in and he begins to do maybe what you have thought is the impossible, or in your own life you thought, there's no way he loves me enough to bring me out of this, and he does. But then how do you respond to those moments? I think what's so cool is, for these folks, and we don't get the whole picture, but for many that continue to follow and dig deeper, and they brought more people, we can respond like these folks, that were starting to explore and follow Jesus, or we can respond like the Pharisees. Now, let's keep going here. Matthew chapter 12, verses 24 through 29 says, "But when the Pharisees heard this, they said, 'It is only by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, that this fellow drives out demons.' Now, Jesus knew their thoughts, and he says to them," and so here's the parable, here's the story. Jesus sees what they're thinking. He knows what's happening here. And he says, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your people drive?" Hold on. Sorry about that. "And if I drive out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your people drive them out? So then they will be your judges. But if I drive out demons by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. Or again, how can anyone enter a strong man's house and carry off his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man? Then he can rob his house." So here's the Pharisees. They saw it, heard about it, but they respond in a totally different way to the work and ways of Jesus, to these spirit-infused moments where the Spirit of God is breaking in to the mess, to the brokenness, to the hurt. Pharisees are like, "No way, this is not the Messiah. This is not the deliverer. This is not God. This is actually, from Beelzebub, Satan, and it's in this place of, I think, jealousy and fear and doubt. It says Jesus could see their thinking. He could feel their doubting, right? So he begins to share with them some of the parables, and this parable, that he began to talk about. And what's Jesus is doing is he's actually reasoning with them. And he says, a kingdom divided against itself can't stand. A household that's divided is actually separated. And he says, if Satan drives out Satan, how does that make any sense? And I love that, because it forces the Pharisees to think about their response to what's happening here. And then Jesus goes on, he says, but if the Spirit of God is at work, then that means that the kingdom of God is breaking in against the kingdom of darkness. He says the strong man, the spirit, has not been tied up. Going to skip a little bit here now. So let's jump ahead a little bit, because we can't get through every part of chapter 12. And so move down with me to verse 38. Jesus begins to talk to them in another part of the parable. So then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to them, "Teacher, we want to see a miraculous sign from you." He answered, "A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a miraculous sign, but none will be given except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will stand up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it. For they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and now one greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to listen to Solomon's wisdom, and now one greater than Solomon is here. Now, this stuff can, you can be like, and if you're listening to this and you're not able to read it for yourself, you're going like, what? So the Pharisees, Jesus talks to them and they're like, you're only doing this healing. This isn't the Spirit of God. This isn't actually God breaking in. He's not here yet. The Pharisees didn't believe that the Messiah had come. So they're totally oblivious to these Spirit of God moments through Christ. And so their response is, this is Satan. And Jesus disputes that. He shares this and he's like, why would Satan cast Satan out of Satan's territory? That would totally defeat the purpose. And then, the Pharisees, after, not getting it, they come back to him and they have the audacity to ask for a miraculous sign. Hello, what did Jesus just do? He brought healing to the man who couldn't see and couldn't speak. And I cannot imagine, as I read reading this passage, thinking about it, cannot imagine not wanting to just rip in to the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. Are you kidding me? Like how completely oblivious do you have to be, right? But Jesus doesn't. Well, not in the way that maybe you and I would. He says, you do have a sign. And I'm sure they were kind of like, what? And he refers to the prophet Jonah. He refers to the story of Jonah. And, we know Jonah, and the story of Jonah, how Jonah, was in the belly of the whale for the 3 days. And of course, in this, Jesus is clearly referring to himself. And he's saying to them that this miracle is right in front of you. You want a sign? Well, I'm the sign. And then he's referring to the fact that he's going to be crucified and then buried in the ground for 3 days. He's referring to himself. He's referring to the miracle of his resurrection. And, they don't get it. They haven't put 2 and 2 together. And really, in so many ways, they even just don't want to. And, those who would respond to Spirit-infused moments, to these Jesus moments where heaven is breaking into earth with humility, who would respond in surrender and trust, they're going to experience the kingdom. And that's what was happening. People were coming and they were responding in following Jesus. They were responding in compassionate ways by bringing people to him. They were listening to his teaching. They were, astonished by him. And yet you've got the Pharisees who are completely, questioning it. They were doubting. They were fearfully, in my opinion, ignoring these moments where God was at work, and they were missing out. And talking tonight, and kind of I think one of the main points tonight is God is at work all around us. The Spirit is at work and wants to be at work all around us. And there are these Spirit-infused moments where the kingdom is breaking in all around us. And in so many ways. Sometimes it's subtle ways. Sometimes it's really, miraculous, incredibly miraculous ways. But our living out the story is being open to God's power at work around us. It's about inviting him into our mess. It's about inviting him into our brokenness. It's about inviting him into our hurts, where then he can bring healing and hope, where he can bring restoration, where his power can be at work and his promises can be fulfilled. So the question is, how do we respond? Do we respond like the people who would continue to trust and go deeper, or are we going to respond like the Pharisees and miss out because we're too busy questioning? We're too busy kind of wanting it one way, and that way is our way. Are we open to Him being God and us being followers and people who need Him? The reality is, part of it is, are we desperate enough to allow God to break in, and then to respond as in this place of trust, in this place of freedom, and living out the story. Like I said, it's all about being open to God's work around us. Time and time again, Jesus accuses the Pharisees of being blind, of being stubborn and stiff-necked. And, he says, even, stiff-necked people want a sign. What I find is really interesting is that he says that the people of Nineveh would be there at the end. People of Nineveh turned because they heard and saw, the story of salvation through Jonah, and they repented and they turned their way, and Jesus says that, right to the Pharisees, that the Ninevites, these people who were thought to be so far from God, they would be there in the last day as part of the judgment. And I think it's just another response that Jesus was helping us to see, that no one is too far. No one's gone too far to respond to those spirit-filled moments. It was right there on the edge when you read the book of Jonah, but they responded in trust and faith, and really gave themselves in repentance to following God. And I hope that's you and me, that we would continue to respond to spirit-infused moments with humility and trust and surrender, believing that He can do more than we can ever ask or imagine. And that's really the heart of these parables that Jesus wanted to get at. And that's, what living out the story is. It's responding in that grace and humility to those spirit-infused moments. So I pray that you and I would both, we all would be living out the story day to day. And so look for those spirit-infused moments this week. Step into them. Trust Him. Maybe you've not done that. Maybe you're trying to control the world around you, all through human understanding and means. Well, look for God, because He's at work, and He wants you to respond with surrender and trust and humility as He works miracles all around you. They may not be the big, bold, audacious miracle. They may just be the seemingly small or insignificant. But when God's at work, they are all supernatural. So they will bring incredible restoration, healing, hope, and transformation. So let's respond with this deep desire to know more, see more, and be more like Jesus. Hope you all have a great evening. Look forward to connecting with many of you tomorrow morning at New Life. And it's going to be a fun morning. It's Family Sunday. So we're going to be experiencing baptism and child dedication and communion together. So I pray that you are able to join us, whether online or in person, online, newlifecommunity.us, and you can click the button that says attend online. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of the Saturday evening.